Get caught up. So, good afternoon, everybody. It is such a pleasure to have all of you here with us today. I think I know many of you, but my name is Cindy Hales. I'm the Vice President of Community Investment at the Community Foundation, and we are I want to say delighted to offer this webinar for all of you. It probably isn't the subject that we thought we were going to have to present, but here we are, and we're really happy that we have some expertise that's going to help us to work through some of this. So a couple of very quick and small housekeeping things. If I could ask everybody to mute their computers so we don't have any background distraction or noise, that would be great. We'd love to see your faces if you're comfortable doing that, but if not, that's okay too. You did hear the meeting is being recorded. We will stop recording during the question and answer, so please feel free to be open and candid about the questions that you want to ask. If you have something that is more urgent, we ask you to put it in the chat box, and Tracy can bring that question forward to Regina and I as we're presenting. So Regina, I think those are the things that we talked about as housekeeping. The beauty of Zoom is that I don't have to tell anybody where the snacks in the restroom are. You know that. So we're going to jump right in and get started.
Awesome. Thank you. I want to quickly introduce myself to you. For those that don't know me, my name is Regina Pinney. I'm the Executive Director of Nonprofit Network, and I have been in the nonprofit business, assisting nonprofits, consulting for nonprofits, helping them in times of trouble and distress for more than 30 years. What I want to start by saying is you can't scare me. You can't surprise me. I've heard it all. I've seen it all. And there's always a path forward. So I bring to you a host of resources and tools and ideas and suggestions. We have an hour, but Tracy and I are going to make sure that if you want some time with Nonprofit Network, Cindy is going to make herself available as well to just talk it through so that you don't feel alone and you don't feel lost. Okay? So you're in a safe space. The first thing that we're going to talk a little bit about is what are we doing here? What is the purpose of today? Cindy and I are so excited about our car maintenance analogy. You're going to love it. This is not a diagnostic one size fits all. We are not going to tell you what to do. We want to make sure that you're able to identify how far down the road trouble is and how you might be able to circumvent or do something else differently today. Our goal is to keep you calm. Our goal is to make sure that if you're in panic mode, you can get out of panic mode. Or you might say, Cindy, Regina, am I supposed to be panicking? Like, I don't even know. We're going to help you keep kind of your brain space available for problem solving. And really, what we're doing is how do you identify from a leadership perspective the questions you should be asking one another around your board table, in your offices, to make sure that in this chaos, like what are tariffs going to do? And what are like, do I get funding? And what if we don't get funding? Cindy and I have no idea what those answers are. Absolutely zero idea what those answers are. What we're doing today is creating a framework so that when something happens, you can plan and predict. Safety is planning and predicting. Cindy, is there anything else that you want to add here for our purpose? Okay. Okay. So another little Tracy wave for me. So Tracy is our program coordinator, program manager, and she's going to be managing the chat. If there is a question that you do not feel safe or comfortable asking in a public setting, like you don't want to reveal yourself, I want you to instant message Tracy, and she will, like in your chat, you can actually pick Tracy, type in your message, and she will either rephrase it in the chat or she'll put herself off mute and she'll ask the question on your behalf. So you don't like, there's no scary parts of this. You can ask a crazy question, a silly question, an off the wall question, and she's got you covered. Okay. Okay. And then if you want to make an appointment with me or anyone on my team, Tracy will help you. You can even email Tracy and Tracy will figure out how to get you on Cindy's calendar. Like no problem here at all. And she'll put her email in the chat so that it's easy and clickable.
Regina, real quick, there was a
Yeah.
question about everybody getting a copy of the recording and the slides afterwards. So let me just say yes, we'll make that available, both the recording and the slides. So Leanne, you can stop frantically taking notes.
Yeah, you don't need to take pictures of the screen, any of that. We've got you. Just sit and the notes that you're taking possibly are going to be the questions that you need to ask or the stories, documenting some of the stories that might touch home for you. All right. The first thing that we're going to do is talk about your organizational health and that your health is a system. So Cindy, we wanted to have a conversation about the difference between a dashboard and just looking at the lights and whether or not the lights are on versus what the actual action is around the maintenance. So our little memes here are the engine light came on. I opened the engine and look, it's still there. We're all good. Or this, raise your hand if you've got a check engine light on your own car that you just continue to ignore. We're going to be okay. It's fine. I haven't looked in the manual, but it still drives. We're okay. We're fine. So this is what I want to talk about, kind of the initial warning signs and what your organization should be doing as preventative maintenance, just double checking whether or not it's a sensor out or something. So trouble doesn't always look like a crisis. The avoidance of the lights, the recognition that we might have an amber flag or a green flag that's kind of fading into orange. We need to begin to look at trends. We need to look at what we're observing. We need to start thinking about those plan Bs, plan Cs. So around your board table, I hope you're asking, what are these economic conditions and how or when might they impact us? When will we know that something's coming down the pike that's going to have to change or divert us? For many organizations that are pretty large, you might think that you're safe because you have a big budget. You're probably most impacted because a big budget means big expenses. And some of the things like the dissolution of the ARPA dollars that are helping you fund your staff, many organizations are determining that those are going away and just those ramifications. I heard just yesterday that the ARPA and the COVID dollars that were augmenting salaries have gone away and their organization closed, like are starting to dissolve because of those dollars going away. So looking at the threats and the possibilities of what we purchase, where it comes from, what the state budget is going to look like. Just having those conversations as kind of opportunities for a fire drill is really, really important. Cindy, what would you add here?
I think just really quickly, the only thing that I would add is that this whole scenario planning, creating trends that you can monitor. Some of this, I think a little bit of what happened is that we had this thing called COVID, and this was something that none of us had ever dealt with before. And then we sort of became sort of more aware, right? Our awareness heightened around some of the things that we needed to be really watching. And I think there's been this little moment of, oh, good, that's over. Like this little lull of, well, we dodged that bullet, right? And now here we are again in this other moment. So I would challenge all of you to think about, okay, let's think about what we did 5 whole years ago now, if you can believe it. When we were in this other situation, what are the things that we were watching? Let's reactivate some of that if we haven't been really paying attention to those things, and really take a look at, where we've been over the last few years and whether or not that's something we need to be keeping a really close eye on moving forward.
Cindy, the other thing that you're bringing up for me is that so many of us who had to do some rapid response around COVID, and that rapid response was like it we went from here to here, and then we stabilized for a good 4 years at this level, and there was a recognition that maybe we could start relaxing, or that our team is so tired from this elevated risk of funding and bounce back, and what's the economy going to do, and what's this going to do, all the new regulations. And so some of us are entering into this space tired already. And so our boards are tired. We may not have regrown our boards or re-engaged our boards. I've heard that some boards just started getting back into in-person meetings, which means the relationships around the board table are not as strong as they used to be. The relationship between everybody matters when we're talking about decision making, and looking at a screen and being off camera making your dinner during board meetings has not is not served us well. And so now we're back in person, and we almost feel like we need to like, what is our mission again? What are the programs that we're doing? How did we get here? Okay, so the first thing to that end is I want to talk about board governance. Leadership matters. So for those executive directors on the call, you certainly are like, wow, I haven't been stewarding my board. I haven't been nurturing my board. My board's been on autopilot. We haven't had really deep or impactful conversations. And here we are moving into another moment where I need like everybody on deck. So having a conversation and re-engaging your board around these shared agreements about what success looks like, not shared agreements about like, hey, show up to the meeting, but do we all agree on what the success of our mission and the success of this organization look like? Because it's different now than it was. I talk to a lot of organizations where an executive director will say, if I ask my board members to show up, man, they're there. They're, cooking the chicken and they're sweeping the floors, and they are like, they're all in for me. They are so engaged. And when I say, does your board know how many days of cash on hand you have? No. What do your board meetings look like? We're event planning, we're event managing. We're looking at the bank statement, but we're not actually having any other conversation around how much money we might need in the future or what's at risk. So, Cindy, what are some of the board behaviors you've seen in organization that might signal trouble?
Yeah, I think what happens is, and this is a little bit the same theme, is that it's very easy for boards to become a little complacent. So don't send me nasty chat messages, board members. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about, other board members. Um, it again, I think if you have strong staff leadership, if you've, again, dodged the COVID bullet and you're continuing to operate and you're doing good work, it is very easy to say, okay, we've got a great team and they take care of that. And really, when Regina talks about leadership matters, it's that you, as the governing body of that organization, are ultimately responsible for that organization. And that means not just leaving it to the staff, but really being knowledgeable and being able to guide the staff and your executive director, no matter how amazing they are, because it really does, right? It takes a team, it takes a group of people, and a lot of voices around the table. So every voice should matter and should be heard. Hopefully, your organization has worked on having a really diverse group of people around the table at your board meetings. And that's great if that's the case. But it's less great if we're not actually hearing from all of those voices, right? These are challenging times, and people will have different perspectives, different life experiences that they can bring. And so this idea around nurturing and cultivating your board so that people feel safe and want to be engaged, feel that it's safe to be transparent, say what's on their minds, all of those kinds of things. I know Regina's going to talk about a little bit, but I think that that's so important.
I am working with several organizations right now, but a couple of case studies for you. One of the organizations that I'm working with made a decision 13 years ago. None of the board members are there anymore. And the current board members honestly don't know how we arrived here in this space. We don't understand the financial ramifications of the decisions. We don't know the knotted funding streams that if we pull on this string, something way over there is going to falter, and that all of the funding that's attached is connected. And they were mad at one another. They sat at those board meetings and go, how come you don't know this? How come you don't know this? And it was because, quite honestly, the executive director had transitioned. The original person and the original team that had made these decisions 13 years ago, none of them had been there. None of them were there at that point. They hired another executive director, and the whole board was mad at that person because this person didn't know, couldn't communicate this braided funding and this knot of decision making, didn't have the capacity. So frustration, frustration, frustration. This guy is like, I'm out of here. This isn't worth it. Leaving the rest of the board to go, we have such a mess. We don't know how to talk about this. We don't know how to unravel it, and we don't know how to make decisions around this mess that has been left. And part of it was because there wasn't a lot of succession planning or note taking back here. You may have experienced that where like there's no map that was left for us. There's no breadcrumbs. And so this board has spent the last 10 months talking to one another instead of at one another. What do you know? What skills do you bring? How do we navigate these conversations? So I think the permission that I'd like to give you is it's okay to ask that simple question and say, I'm not sure how we arrived here. Can someone explain the multiple decisions that may have occurred, and are any of those renegotiable? Do we need to check in with any of those? I can tell you from a board culture standpoint that if there's defensiveness around the please train me, please educate me type of questions, then you all need to stop, take a really deep breath, and say, how might learning occur for us right now? We're all on different pages. We're all in different spaces. We haven't been in the same room together. I don't even know where you work. I don't even know what job you do. What do you bring here? Relationships matter. Board culture matters. And if we're living in a fear-based environment where I'm afraid as a board member to hurt somebody's feelings by asking a hard question, we need to reset and level. As we enter in really hard times, we need relationships. I'm not talking friendships, but we need respect to navigate something that we don't even know the threat that might be coming to us. Make sense? So my maintenance recommendation is slow down and begin asking what we need to collectively learn about our history, our past, our way of decision making. It's really, really important. I work with organizations all the time that are like, wait, 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 wait. Can the executive director make that decision? The executive director just decided to close down the office on Juneteenth. Is that okay? Like, is that their decision or is it our decision? An unknown answer like that of who's in charge and who has authority, huge. And we fix that all the time, which means I know your board doesn't know their authority, nor do they know the authority of those around them. Who's actually making the decision? And are we sitting around the table informing, or are we sitting around the table deciding? Okay, good, Cindy? Okay.
Yeah. Are we going to talk about the a few board behaviors?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, so I think, again, if you think about your board meetings and all the things that Regina just talked about, I think there are some signs when we talk about, oh, are we sort of in trouble, right? So signs like I can't get a quorum is a big one. Not once or twice, but pretty consistently, I can't get a quorum. People don't want to come to board meetings. People come to board meetings and open up their laptops or their tablets or their paper board packets, however you do it in your organization. And you can see on their face, it's the first time that they have seen anything related to this meeting. It's like, oh, so coming unprepared, not coming at all, coming to meetings and not being engaged, not speaking, not participating. And I think another sign, and my ED friends are going to hate this, but when you come to board meetings consistently and they're done in a half an hour because every motion is unanimously passed, and yes, it's great, and you're wonderful, and let's move on and go about our business. That it might feel good, like, yay, they loved everything I brought. The truth is, it's a really big sign of trouble because it's a sign that there's not the level of engagement that you need. People aren't asking questions, people aren't diving into things. And those are the kinds of things I think you have to sort of watch out for as you're paying attention to your board and what they might be telling you without saying the words.
Yeah. Yeah. I think to add to that, if somebody says, like, if you see the entire board, like, just kind of blank faced when something kind of outrageous or weird happens and nobody noticed, that's how disengaged that the board might be. Or they're looking around going, nobody else found that odd. Okay, it must not be odd, right? So again, that like, are we connected enough to be able to read each other's facial expressions? And that kind of leads us into the this next conversation, which is how have we been practicing these hard conversations and being really truly transparent with one another around the board table? It's never too late. It's never too late to ask questions. Um, so we need a culture that creates and allows for a space for difficult conversations. We need to have board members that get to ask any question as long as it's for the purpose of building the organization and there's no retaliation, right? There's a moniker that we use. Don't climb up on the table along with your idea. Can I put an idea on the table and walk away from it and know that whatever happens to it, I'm okay with that? We can have a conversation about, stopping my favorite event because it no longer suits or serves the organization, and I'm not offended, nor am I going to leave because my favorite thing left or is no longer, or we have to talk about changing or amending it. That we're really there for the centralized purpose, not necessarily to make me feel good as a board member. We have to acknowledge that this transparency, the ability to talk about hard things, builds trust, Trust is critical to make really good decisions. Without trust, we cannot make good decisions. I'm going to say that again. Without team trust, trust within ourselves, it will be impossible to make good decisions. We need to listen and hear and understand everybody's conversation and everybody's idea. Without that, no good decisions will come from it. So we need to build trust and build the trust bank to be able to work quickly in times of a crisis. So one possible opportunity to think about how our culture is to know if it's safe for someone in within your organization to just say, I'm kind of worried. Like I'm worried. I'm worried about payroll, or I'm worried that we don't have enough cash in the bank, or I'm worried that we have a really high retention or lack of retention of really key staff. Like, why do we have a revolving door? Asking those really important, critical baseline questions and having an open and honest conversation about those allows the organization to build trust. It's also okay around your board table, even if the board is virtual meetings, put everybody in breakouts, pull everybody away from the table, turn and talk to the person next to you and go, what is your biggest concern about the future of this organization? What do you think our threats are? And what might we be doing right now to mitigate those threats? Everyone's talking. Everyone's being able to share in that process of having a conversation with your neighbor. You're building a relationship. You come back together. You go, what did you all say? What was this long list of things that you might be concerned about? And let's begin talking about these. It allows all voices to be heard. It allows for deep engagement, re-engagement, and you're not shutting anything down or just letting one person say what they want to say. It's very timely. It's an efficient way to get all these ideas on the table. Chart them if you're in person, open a Google Doc if you're virtual, and co-collaborate and make it transparent. And for those of you that are in charge, I know how hard this is going to be. Do not become defensive. As soon as you become defensive, you lose your rapport and you lose your trust. It's okay for people to question, and it's okay that you may not have the answer tonight or today. You might need to go and research and send a long email as long as you need to, or host a separate special meeting to go, I figured it out, or I have a lot of data. Let's talk about this. But if you become defensive, I know you're tired. Chairs, I know you're tired. Leaders, I know you're tired. If you exhibit that exhaustion and fatigue of, you want me to figure this out again, it's gonna create a system in which this spiral of despair is going to be pervasive. Um, Cindy, what story do you have?
Stories.
Mm,
Uh, I'm going to save my story for later.
mm, okay. My story, I'll share my story. I am working with an organization right now I mean, this organization has been in trouble for a long time, but they're one of those essential organizations that can't close. No one's going to let them close, but they have had a culture problem forever. 30 years ago, they were talking about internal culture and not being able to keep employees, and they have just lost their next CEO because the organization can't figure out this issue. And they called me in a couple months ago to kind of mediate a conversation between the board and the CEO. And one of the things that I recognized immediately was that the CEO was defensive. In fact, the CEO asked me, should I bring a lawyer to this meeting? And I said, would you bring a lawyer to a marriage counselor? Like, you're already gone. If this is where you are, if you're already in a, I need to protect myself because this board is going to treat me bad, right? Then we're already done here. And so recognize that for all parties, if you're already trying to figure out how to protect yourself or leave, it's time to go. So if you're in this adversarial fight between your board or your executive director, or when you walk into that boardroom and you feel the tension, you either need to call in a mediator to go, can we resolve this in some way? Or you have to recognize it's broken. Okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, okay. All right. So financial health. We have a bunch of what are the flags that I need to be looking at and how do I look at them? This first one is financial red flags, financial amber flags. So the first conversation is we have a whole bunch of data. We are data rich. We don't know how to talk about our data and we don't know how to talk about what our data means. We don't necessarily use our data to compare or to contrast or to understand projections. So, one conversation from a collective standpoint, education is a social construct. Data is data. Our meaning is what we assign to it. So if we're looking at our budget, we need to be asking the questions around how much makes us safe? How much money should we have in the bank? How comfortable are we that we have less than that? What are we going to do to protect ourselves financially? These conversations don't happen by looking in the rear view mirror, which is what a lot of you do every board meeting. How much did we spend last month? How much did we have in the bank last month? Did we make budget last month? Many of your finance committees and your board meetings are simply looking at reports that tell you what you did. Few of you are actually looking at all of the information that can predict the future. When we look at all the money coming in and all the money that we have committed to spend, what will be our bottom line in 3 months, in 6 months, in 12 months? Have you built a rolling 3-year budget where you're projecting based on all of the uh, um, opposite of depreciation, inflation, all the inflation ratios based on what you know from the past and you project it into the future. Where's the money coming from? Where's the expenses going? How long do you have to survive? And then if you have that future 3-year, 2-year budget, if you've already crafted your 2026 budget, you begin to learn how to plan and predict. And that is critical. Planning and predictions allow you to sleep at night. Looking in the rearview mirror is scary because you can't see around corners. So look at projections, figure out how to forecast, get really good at looking forward through the windshield instead of the rearview mirror. And then use tools to invite, not intimidate. So some of you like to inundate your organization with dashboards and numbers and information, and it feels very overwhelming because you essentially say, look at this beach full of sand. Every single thing is a piece of data. What does it mean? We need really useful tools that allow us to figure out how to read the numbers in front of us. Many of your board members don't know how to read your financial reports. Not because they don't know how to read financial reports, it's they don't know how to read your financial reports. Many of your board members have served on many, many, many boards. All financial reports look different. Every single one of them. You have to train your people how to read these reports and what the numbers mean. Cindy, oh, you're still on mute.
I clicked, sorry. So I just want to say, if I'm looking at the list of people who are joining us today, it doesn't matter if you are a multi-million dollar budget or if you have five digits in your operating budget. It matters not your size. You as an organization have the same kind of responsibility and the same kind of infrastructure available to you to be making financial decisions. So there are probably lots of folks on this call that have kind of rolled their eyes and thought, oh, that community foundation, they want us to create this for our grant application, right? It is not about wanting you to generate reports. It is about wanting you to know what your financial position is. And to Regina's point, part of that comes from looking at a profit and loss and seeing what is happening in the day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month operations of your organization. But it also requires a budget, right? So that you are aligning yourself with what those expenses are and keeping your organization in check. I I know how easy it is to overlook those things or to stick to those things. Think about how you live your personal lives, right? How you make your investments in your IRAs, how you manage your checkbook, all those kinds of things. Like you know that these are things that are important for you. They are important plus, plus, plus for your organization. But I think the one thing that I see lacking with a lot of organizations is a cash on hand report. And that can be so very telling. Your cash on hand is not the amount of money that you have in your bank account. Like that is not your cash on hand, right? You need to be looking at that, trending that over time, watching what's happening to that so that you know not what's in the bank account today, but projecting that amount based on the trends of that cash on hand over time, how much operating dollars you have moving forward. And the last thing I'll say is, again, it doesn't matter if you have lots of zeros or a few zeros in your operating budget. You as an organization need to sit down as a board and a staff and make a decision about your comfort level, right? Where do we want to be? What is our goal for cash on hand, for operating? How many months are we comfortable with? And then when are we less comfortable? And then when do we panic, right? So this is our goal of where we want to be. This is when we start to get, we need to reimagine some things, rethink what we're going to do about this. And this is where we panic. And what I don't want anybody to do is get to the panic mode without really taking some kind of action. And that is the beauty of using these tools, is that it will allow you to respond before you have to hit the panic button.
Okay. So next conversation. Um, what are some of the ways, what are some of the things that we might be seeking that will help us know that we're in trouble? Operating at a deficit and burning through your reserves. During COVID, maybe that's what we had to do. Maybe we don't have as many reserves as we used to have. We might be looking at significant loss of major funding or donor fatigue. We've been looking at the number of donors that we carried through. Like 2019, we started here. COVID made a reduction. Okay, now we have a new baseline. Now we have, especially these first 6 months, most of you probably have experienced some delayed payments, like people are holding on to their cash. People are nervous. Will we have enough money? Will my family have enough money? Will companies have enough money to sponsor? So some of you might be experiencing this holding of breath, waiting all around, almost like the world is very quiet, right? So what does that tell us? And is that gonna like what are we gonna do about that? And then some of us might be relying on short-term or one-off funding sources, like our consistent funding has begun to tail off or trail off. So those are some flags that we need to be looking at. You get to decide if that flag is amber or red or burning. But that's some of the data that we'd like you to look at. The other data that we think you should be looking at is what's going on internally, what's going on operationally. Um, so I love this picture because the driver of the car completely oblivious to the fear that the passenger is having. This is going on. This is happening in organizations right down the street from you. It might even be happening in your organization. You might have employees that have quiet quit, like they're taking the paycheck, but they're no longer invested in your success. You may have a revolving door. People come and they don't stay very long. That could be also happening at your board, where they come for a couple meetings and then you're ghosted. Your staff are going to see the problems first. And so, what is the vibe that you're getting from employees? How satisfied are they? How psychologically safe are they within your organization? And that can be from the board perspective. Listen, we probably need to take the temperature of our staff. Let's do a not a staff satisfaction survey necessarily, but a staff safety, like what's going on in your home? Are you experiencing financial hardship? Like, what's the stresses that are going on so that we can understand whether or not we as an organization are adding to that unbeknownst to us because we're all running around with flags on fire? Or are we having a disengagement of our team because of all the other things that are going on? How do we know and how do we address those issues? And we want to know the actual problem. Many of us will see an issue or a symptom and just start whack-a-mole symptoms versus really identifying the problem at hand. And I think that we will all be exhausted if in the whack-a-mole game. We can't win there. We have to figure out the generation of the problem and fix that problem instead of band-aids all around our organization. Cindy, do you have an example there for you?
No, I'm gonna pass.
You're still saving it. I can't wait. This is going to be a great story.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, no pressure.
So the next conversation I want to have is, again, the warning signs. If you look at this picture of this car on fire, it's clear that the car was just driving like a second ago. It was able to pull on the side of the road, but here it is just engulfed. One of the things that we need to recognize is if we wait too long, we run out of options. If we wait too long, our only option is dissolution or termination or all of those things that impact the mission. And we know our organizations are required within our communities. Our communities need us to be healthy. Our communities need us to be efficient and effective and produce results. And so ignoring the red flags, ignoring the amber flags, not understanding what's going on within our organization will drive off the cliff. So it we can't bury our heads. We have to be able to start doing scenario planning, predicting, planning. And so what I want to move in now for a good portion of the time that we have left is I want you to think about these reminders in your scenario planning, in your conversations, both internally and at your board meetings. What pays the bills? We have staff that actually produce programs that we get paid for. We need to recognize that when we start thinking about staff reduction or hour reduction or limitations in expenses, that we have to protect what's most important. You as an organization need to identify what's most important for you and figure out how to protect those things. If you begin to shrink or need to shrink for any reason, confirm what funding has obligations tied to it. There are many, 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 many examples of organizations that say, I took this money from a donor, from a foundation, from a source. I made a promise. That promise is not a promise in name only. There is a legal obligation to spend that money on what you promised to spend it on. And if you don't, they're going to come and say, prove it or give it back. You're in a you don't have the money to give it back. So you need to determine what your obligations are and how to protect those obligations. So understand your grant contracts, read those grant obligations, make sure you're keeping those things that are most important, and make sure your board knows what's most important. If you can't pay employees, you might want to identify partners or contractors that can help if a contractor or a partner is going to come more cheaply than a paid employee to deliver that program. I want you to review your insurance policies. What will an insurance policy cover in terms of a issue or a business continuity failure? Like what help is available to you? Know that now before you actually need to use the insurance policy so that you understand the limitations and the criteria there. Pay your payroll taxes. This is a really scary story. There are organizations that have said, wow, this is an easy bill not to pay. If we just hold on and we'll pay it later, but we can't pay this now. The IRS does not like that. There are executive directors that to this day, 15 years after it happened, because they made the decision, continue to have their wages garnished by the IRS to pay back payroll taxes. This is a non-negotiable. Pay payroll taxes. It's not worth it. Figure out another way if you've got to reduce an expense. And you can't just walk away. There are a lot of organizations that have said, okay, run it into the wall. We got no more money left. We're just going to lock the door and walk away. There's a legal process to dissolve a nonprofit organization, and sign off is required by the Attorney General. So remember, it's not as easy as just going, we'll just stop. And that legal process takes time, which brings us back to forecast and predict and project when you might need to start changing how you work. There's a lot of options. There's a full continuum between where you are now and dissolution. if you have the time to enact that plan. Okay, Cindy, we're in the action phase.
We are.
So here's the biggest message of all. You are not alone. You are not alone. You are not alone. There's help available. You just have to ask. And there's no shame in not knowing what to do next. There is shame in hiding. There's like just let's just forget it. All of those missed warning signals. And the shame doesn't come from people like me. It comes from inside you. We have talked to so many board members, so many executive directors that are like, I feel like I failed and I just wanted it to go away. Seek help. Take a deep breath. Find your clarity. Clarity is going to come in the form of your data. Identify the actual problem. Don't guess. Identify the actual problem and let's come up with solutions for that problem. Is it a staff issue? Is it a staff engagement issue? Is it a board engagement issue? Is it a scary, I don't know what the state budget is going to look like? Is it a scary, I don't know what the federal budget is going to look like? We've got a lot of unknowns. We can protect ourselves as long as we have the data. And then do some scenario planning. Nonprofit Network just a couple of months ago, Tracy, wasn't it so fun? I was like, fire drill. I don't show up to work tomorrow. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And then we did it at the board meeting. Fire drill. I don't show up for work tomorrow for whatever reason. What will you do? What's like, I produce a lot of revenue as the executive director. I'm responsible for a lot of things. Let's talk it through for whatever reason. And we practice the hard conversation. It wasn't real. It was a fire drill. And we passed on both cases. And we're going to continue to do it again. We had the fire drill of Tracy, who honestly knows everything and does everything in our organization. The whole world stops if Tracy doesn't come to work. We had that fire drill of what happens when the only person who knows how to update our website and get an email out to our entire distribution list and knows where to confirm a room reservation. What if she doesn't come to work tomorrow? What are we going to do? Fire drills are important. So scenario planning, take your budget. This number goes away. What does that number pay for? What is it? Where are the expenses? What do we do? The more times you can go through that and be successful, the more you can say, we can handle it. We can handle a change wherever it comes from. New board members, new staff, new funding, less funding. You want to tell your story now? You're on mute.
I know.
I
I
love
don't put
you.
close enough to the mic. Um, I want to end on a happy note, but this is not a happy story. But I
Oh, we
think
will
it's,
find one. Mhm.
what's that?
We'll find one.
We'll find one. Okay, we will. Um, but I wanted to just share a little bit about an organization that I have worked with in the past, that really had warning signs in all three of the areas that we've talked about today. There was a crisis at the board. People were not showing up for board meetings. People were ignoring reports that were being presented at board meetings. You know, if we're being really thoughtful about the issue, it goes back to there not being good recruitment of board members, not good training of board members, which is a whole other thing that we do to help you start before you even get to the point of, you know, whether or not you have a problem with your board. Um, there were also financial issues. It was, you know, increasingly evident for people who were paying attention that they were going to run out of money. And there was a terrible staff culture. People didn't trust each other. People didn't trust the CEO to say what they thought might be happening in the organization. Um, but nobody really knew that except the organization itself, right? The executive director, maybe a couple of close confidants in the organization. But until the moment that the ED threw up her hands and said, we can't do this anymore, we're done, nobody really knew what was going on. And that's why we really want to talk about this action, remembering that you're not alone, understanding that there is help out there. We can't solve every problem, but I think the more that you pay attention to these individual signs, the little red amber flags, and then take a moment and think about who are the resources that I have that can help me think through this, that can strategize with me, that can help me think about how to fix the problem. It will stop folks from getting to the point of having the car on fire, and unfortunately needing to walk away from it completely. And so it's an organization that is now lost, and it's tragic. And I don't want that to happen to anybody here or anybody else in our communities that we work and live in, because the work and the things that you do are also incredibly important to making this, just a great region to live in. So please, please, please reach out to Regina, reach out to me. We have a lot of resources that we can help direct you to. And I also, and I'm sure Regina would do this too, I drink a lot of coffee with a lot of folks, and we just sit and chit chat and brainstorm and explore ideas, for what might be. So if you take away nothing else, it's pay attention to the signs, and then ask for help because it really is out there. So, are we ready for questions, Regina?
So I want to, yes, we are. So one, for those of you that know Car Talk, please appreciate the Car Talk reference. There, yes, yes. And so I'm going to tell a little story. You wanted to end on a good story. I'll tell a good story, but also start crafting either in the chat or raise your hand, and we're here until there's no more questions. But my good story is that when we do pay attention and build an engaged board where everyone around the table is actively engaged in problem solving. The executive director doesn't feel alone. The board members feel informed. And that group of people can tackle anything. When you add that to a team of staff who are like, no, 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 I understand that my job's in jeopardy, but let's figure this out. How can we, as a team, collectively figure out how to plan and predict and go through scenarios, of what happens if things go crazy out there and begin to impact us or impact the community and how we're able to serve our community. And then click and clack. Um, and then that conversation about truly knowing your data and having the opportunity to predict long into the future, know what your burn rate is, know where the money is coming from, actively engaged in knowing what keeps you safe and knowing how to make adjustments. Is it, you know, again, if we're protecting the mission makers, the money makers and the mission makers of our organization, is it eliminating a position, or is it eliminating 3 or 4 hours from everybody's salary every week so that we're reducing expenses by the amount that we need, but nobody's actually going to be harmed by that? Those kinds of conversations are things that Nonprofit Network and Cindy can help your board, can help your team, can help you navigate your data. So there's hope. All is not lost. And I hope that many of you came just because you were curious to see, what's the one thing or the two things that I should be doing that I'm not.